Hello, everyone. Welcome back. It's good to be back here. Today we're going to be going over sort of general news as kind of a weekly roundup of news, and I want to talk first about the Unity Party. Of course, I'm not talking about sort of the deep state or sort of the parts of the Democrats and parts of the Republicans that always work together. I'm really talking about a new or more recent example of party unity, or the Unity Party, which was more or less formed around Donald Trump, Tulsi Gabbard, and RFK Jr. Now, these two, RFK Jr., Tulsi Gabbard, had been basically exiled from the Democratic Party. Tulsi was thrown out more or less because she first supported Bernie Sanders, and after the whole debacle where the DNC rigged the primaries against Bernie for Hillary Clinton, that pushed her away from the Democratic Party as a whole, and then she ran to be the party's candidate in 2020 and took down Kamala Harris in the debates, which I think probably put her future with the Democratic Party forever destroyed. As she was obviously antagonistic, she was calling Kamala Harris out for the way she basically used slave labor in as Attorney General in California, which especially from Democratic perspective, from that party, that's a pretty big no-no, I would say. So she definitely showed herself to be sort of on the outs, because Kamala Harris at the time had been the candidate that they were really trying to push. She was sort of the ideal candidate. She fit into all sort of the boxes that they were looking for, because, of course, this was a very woke time in our country's history. This was sort of maybe peak wokery, and she was, even though they eventually went with Joe Biden, because of course they did go through the primary process, and that primary process basically said that um, they were not looking for anything that they were pushing. So basically, they had to rely on a quasi senile Joe Biden. Anyways, so that's part of it. That's part of what moved her away. She was basically dead in the water for her future, and then with the way things went, she eventually left Congress, and she was kind of out of power, out of influence, at least in the Democratic Party. It was unclear what she was going to do, but she eventually moved towards MAGA or Maha or whatever you want to say, because of Trump's criticism of the Ukraine war and his desire to bring peace to various regions. Of course, though, she is very much pro-Israel, so she fits in well with much of what Trump has put forward in that, or at least what his people have said. I don't know what she thinks about the whole idea of taking over Gaza. That's kind of a real bonkers idea that the Trump administration is putting out there, which I don't support, but I think is probably a tactic that they're using in order to bring people to the table. And I'm not sure if the Israelis want that either. I don't really know what Trump really means when he's talking about buying, or not buying. He's just going to take over Gaza. I really do think there's something behind the scenes going on there, and that he's really just looking to sort of push people's buttons to try and get another desired outcome that he's kind of keeping close to the chest. Anyway, so we have Tulsi moving over to MAGA, and also then becoming a member of the Republican Party, which is big. One of the big differences between RFK Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard in this is that Tulsi actually has become a Republican. Now, previously, she actually had very pro-life beliefs. She at one point, because her father is also a politician in Hawaii who had become a Democrat, but really was a Republican, but just wanted to be able to possibly get elected because basically it's a one-party state in Hawaii. So he became a Republican, but he was a pro-life Republican. He was big. I believe he was also um, basically he's also anti-homosexuality and stuff like that. So it's kind of interesting. She sort of moved away from that, but she does have a past in sort of some of those circles. Though her father was, I believe, a Catholic, and so she was kind of raised Catholic, I think, sort of, but also somewhat like Hindu. It's really bizarre. She kind of has the one of the most bizarre backgrounds, but she's definitely moderated her positions, I think, enough to become a Republican, which she's obviously found herself desiring to be. She was then put on a terror watch list, which basically, which she was so basically being followed around, which is absolutely insane, by by the deep state, by the intelligence agencies, and now she has been confirmed as director of national intelligence, which oversees all of the intelligence organizations. There's a question, I think I would have enjoyed more if RFK Jr. was made director of national intelligence, just because he would have blown the whole thing up into smithereens, and just like his uncle wanted to do, because that's one of the big reasons that his uncle was assassinated, was because he threatened the CIA. And we'll see what she actually accomplishes, if she can actually do anything to stop the deep state from basically targeting Americans, as well as manipulating people overseas. Because that's, I mean, at the heart of it, the CIA, if it has any uses at all, it should not be undermining civilization. It is basically become an underminer. It is sort of the um, it basically is there to make sure the American empire can have dominance over various different countries. And she could very well put a stop to much of that. Though the CIA probably is hopeless. It probably should be abolished and just completely done away with. And the another basically arm of the CIA has been the USAID, which is basically funneling money across the globe for various purposes, but mostly probably to get surveillance and on various different countries, and to basically manipulate different countries into being loyal to the United States empire, which of course is not in the which does not benefit the United States people, the American people at all. It is the empire, just as the British Empire has now, after it's been destroyed, is basically coming back to destroy Britain by basically immigration, by illegal immigration, destroying the country. Now, in some ways, it's doing the same thing in the United States, but in other ways, it's just destroying sort of our bank accounts. Are sending money overseas to Ukraine and stuff like that, and basically also the soul of our country. We've sent people over for overseas to do terrible things, and then they come back with PTSD, and then they blow their brains out, which is extremely sad and degrading to humanity and to America itself. But this is one of the things that I would say Tulsi Gabbard is definitely against. She's definitely skeptical. She one of the reasons why they attack her is because she wasn't necessarily interested in overthrowing the Assad regime, because A, it's not really our business, and B, because the people that we were funding to topple Assad were Al Qaeda members. So basically, those who have attacked us on 9/11 were then being funded in order to destroy Syria, which Syria has been destroyed. And what are the results? Israel gets more territory, Turkey gets more territory, and basically a new, easily manipulated regime, at least theoretically. has been created, but it's probably going to be worse for all Christians. Of course, that's part of it, is that they don't the current government at least, sorry, not the current government, the strategy of the American empire has always been detrimental to Christians overseas, which is terrible. Well, Christians overseas have always basically taken the brunt of most of what we've done, outside of literally what should be our enemies. Obviously, the people that are defeated, the Assad regime, is obviously takes a big hit, but then one of the aftermath is basically the destruction of Christians, and that's happened in Iraq, and now it's happening in Syria and all over Armenia, stuff like this. But of course, this is what the American empire is there to do. It's there to basically work for corporations and the military industrial complex in order to further their power and influence overseas. Now, RFK Jr. was also confirmed to be HHS secretary, which is big for the MAHA movement, the Make America Healthy Again movement, which funny. I mean, I think some people might disagree about the great part. So, there's a question: was America great? When was America great? I would say America has been great many times, because great doesn't mean good. I think people conflate the two. Good means good. It's pretty self-explanatory. We all know what good is: moral, that sort of thing. That'd be a tougher question to say when was America good, but great, powerful, that sort of thing. People conflate the two. People think great is good and good is great, but that's not the case. Anyway, so but healthy, definitely we have been healthy in previous times, and Make America Healthy Again is I would say a very bipartisan interest, a unity aspect, which is of course why. So basically, the two pieces of unity are um, health and peace. Health and peace are the two big creators of unity in the United States, because in some ways those are the only two things that the Americans can really agree on. And I'm talking about not like, there's a lot of Americans that can agree on certain positions, but of course I'm talking about more the vast majority. If you ask them about health, though, of course, the 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 um the establishment media have been trying to scare people around vaccines, so that's part of what they're trying to do, is they're trying to undercut RFK Jr.'s message by just going after one aspect that they're trying to scare people off from supporting him, and it was unsuccessful. It's hilarious to me also that sort of Tulsi Gabbard had supported Bernie Sanders, but Bernie Sanders did not vote for Tulsi Gabbard to be confirmed as DNI. It truly shows how uninterested in actually making changes or benefiting sort of a unified country the Democratic politicians are focused on. I believe Fetterman voted for one, not one of these two, but he voted for, was it Pam Bondi maybe? I can't remember who he voted for, but he definitely voted for one of Trump's nominees. Of course, most of them voted for Marco Rubio, who has seemingly been more successful than people were thinking he was going to be, or more anti-establishment than people thought he might be, which is interesting. So he's sort of, it's interesting that he has actually attached himself to this anti-establishment. You could have seen in a way where he supports Trump, but then doesn't want to be a part of the cabinet because he doesn't want to be attached to this government, or this administration, but he does. So maybe that's actually showing some real change, real movement from Marco Rubio, not just what he's saying, but actually maybe what he actually believes. Though that's, I don't trust politicians, so that's not necessarily true, but it's possible at least. And at some point, I want to give people the benefit of the doubt. Now, next, I want to talk about sort of the Captain America Brave New World. Now, I have not gone to see this movie, so I can't tell you that based on my experience how this movie look or is necessarily. But I have been reading a bunch of critic reviews as well as listening to some reviews on YouTube and stuff like that. And what I think I can gather from all of them, more or less, is that the movie is incredibly boring and not worth it. Now, the sort of the left wing reviews are kind of like, "Oh, Anthony Mackie does a good job," and that sort of thing, and you he does a good job in the role of Sam Wilson. Now, that's kind of all that they can kind of grab onto. There's a lot of mention about the action, which I kind of doubt about the action, whether or not it's good. I think most action scenes are pretty boring if they don't have any, sort of oomph behind it regarding meaning. So if the plot of the story is bad, that's not the action is not going to help. It's not going to make anyone want to watch it. It's not going to get anybody interested because, of course, if you don't really care about the characters or the situation that they're in, or if you don't believe it's possible, sort of you've if you're being prevented from really getting into the movie because of other aspects of it, then it really isn't going to help. It doesn't matter if you've choreographed a nice action scene. It really matters whether or not the whole picture can bring, the whole element, the music, the acting, the action, um, the story, the writing, the directing. If it can all be brought together to form a solid story, that's what makes a good movie. So I wouldn't, from what I can tell based on the uh, reviews, is that it's really not worth it. Um, they don't. I mean, I heard some people have said this is a could be a good Falcon movie. If they just sort of dropped the Captain America thing, because of course it, in some ways it leaves a bad taste in your mouth because really Captain America's Steve Rogers. No one really knows. No one really saw the Falcon and the Winter Soldier show. That was a dud. I think I started that show and it was incredibly boring and there really wasn't anything worth um there just wasn't anything worth it about it. It was pretty dull and preachy as well. So I don't know. That's what I gather from it. It probably won't do very well. Its expectations were very low. It was expecting to make the same amount of money that Captain America: The Winter Soldier made on the first weekend, but of course that was in 2014. Winter Soldier came out then, and judging by inflation, it should be at like 130 million, 140 million, something like that. And based on sort of the previous success of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the expectation is that you grow, that you get more viewers, that you attract more people interested in your characters. You don't want to be losing people. And that's really what is being shown by the results of Marvel is that they come out with slop. It's uninteresting. Uh, they don't really know what to do with these characters, and also the massive reshoots. From everything I've heard, it's clear that this movie was changed multiple times because basically the situation, the culture that we're in has changed multiple times, probably while they were making this movie. And if you're not making a movie sort of that will stand the test of time, if you're making it for the moment, if you're making it for the zeitgeist, it will not last. It will probably be, if you sort of get lucky and you manage to get something that fills the moment, okay, maybe it will succeed decently, but it will not. It will be like one of those movies that you watch once and then you forget about it 5 to 10 years later, and that nobody watches, of course. So it might be a bit of a boost, but you're also wanting to, it's sort of a luck-based situation, not really a, it's not really based on your work. It's something that will basically die eventually, and people will not be interested in it. I suggest, if you're ever writing something, if you're ever focused on something, yes, you might want to might make a piece of art that fits well with the time period that you're making for the audience that you're making it for. But also, I would suggest making something that will stand the test of time. It's kind of like, I believe, It's a Wonderful Life. The movie was not very popular when it came out because it came out after World War II, and it was a little too hopeful. It was a little too um, optimistic, maybe. Even though it is very sad, you think, or moments of it, you could say it's not very optimistic, but the overall message is definitely an optimistic one. It didn't. My understanding is it wasn't very popular with the people at that time, and great art comes back. People get excited about it in the future. People find it. People get you know, pass it on. And that's one of the things, is that I doubt the moviegoers who do go the first weekend will then go and say to their friends, "Oh, you need to go see this movie. It's really great. You'll love it." You know, I think most people will just be like, okay, maybe. I don't know why they released this on St. Valentine's Day. Also, happy St. Valentine's Day to everyone. But I don't know why they released it on it. It doesn't really. I don't think it fits. Though of course I think they picked this month because of Black History Month. They were trying to get that moment, but I just don't think that's where everyone's mood's at. I think, especially with the election of Donald J. Trump, the the mood changed. People are not interested in sort of replacing heroes like Captain America with discount versions. And yeah, Anthony Mackie probably did a good job in this movie. He probably needed to do something more than pretty good. He probably needed to do something special. But it's just not. He messed up the press tour as well, basically saying that Captain America shouldn't necessarily represent America, even though it's in the name. So, my opinion is, don't go see it. I haven't seen it, but I don't plan to give Marvel my money, and I suggest you don't either. Maybe one day I'll watch it just for kind of curiosity on a streaming service or something like that. If it's on TV one day or something like that. I don't know if I'll ever watch it. But, kind of like I did not go see The Rise of Skywalker. I think I watched it some other time, on maybe TV or something, just to see how bad it was. And it was terrible. So I imagine, maybe this is going to be similar. But the point is that even the critics basically agree, and that it's a boring movie, even though you'd think that they would be defending this movie totally. So even when critics sort of attacking a movie that's basically political in nature is a bad sign, I would say. So, and from everyone else, mediocre is what I've heard. Not worth it. Next bit of news is that, for all of us Tolkien fans, very sad news that The Rings of Power has been renewed. What a terrible idea this whole show has been. I was kind of hoping, maybe since sort of Bezos had kind of seemingly changed some of his tune, at least on politics, trying to cozy up to the Trump administration a little bit, I thought maybe he'd finally shut this thing down. But the one thing I will say is that they have brought on new directors and new executive producers. They've kept the same people, but they're basically bringing on more experienced people to bring about this season 3, which will have a big time skip. Which I don't really understand what the point of the time skip would be. Time doesn't seem to matter in the show, anyways. So what's the point? All the elves are ageless. I guess Numenor, they could be skipping around Numenor, but if you skip time in Numenor, it's basically going to be destroyed because we're at the point where Numenor should fall soon. And of course, I didn't watch season 2, but I'm just saying this based on what I know about season 1 and sort of the funny reviews that I've seen about season 2. It's just a mess. A- are they trying to say, oh, there's going to be a jump in time, and then they're going to basically salvage this? Try to, but their version of salvaging something isn't so much making it better, but just making it less woke these days. So maybe they'll just cut out some characters. They'll present it as a different story, but then it will end up being really boring. Which, of course, kind of the same thing with Captain America: Brave New World. It's a boring movie. And will The Rings of Power also be a boring TV show? Obviously, maybe they'll take out some of the DEI, some of the heavy-handedness that they've been, uh, you know, using as a cudgel against their enemies. That might happen. I could see that. That's probably the most likely thing, but it's probably not going to be salvageable by any stretch of the imagination. So they're just going to mess up the whole thing again. And yeah, I'm just disappointed that they aren't cutting their losses, but they paid so much money to have the ability to have the license to make TV shows because they can't make movies, they can only make TV, which is kind of weird because I don't really get how you determine that these days with sort of streaming. Streaming is kind of its own thing, but they didn't buy streaming rights. Obviously, they bought TV rights, and they're considering Amazon Prime, I guess, a TV and stuff like that. So I don't know what constitutes TV in this sense because, of course, as I said, it's not on regular TV. And you could watch movies on a TV, but that's doesn't make it TV. So what constitutes TV? I guess sort of this episodic nature of it, maybe. And that's what they have the rights to. Now, if I were them, I'd probably just shut it all down and start from scratch, kick out the producers, throw everyone under the bus. I don't know, say like somehow make it so Amazon isn't responsible or something. Bezos comes in, basically is like, really, we're, apologize, we weren't paying attention to this garbage that was coming out and we really didn't take good care of it. But we are now. We're going to bring in people that really love Tolkien and love what he made and want to stick to it as much as we can and the spirit of it. But they can't do that. It's just not within the capabilities of the quality of writing, quality of directing that is available in Hollywood at the moment, or the mindset. The mindset of Hollywood is antithetical to the view of Tolkien. Tolkien is probably uncomprehendable to these people. They see bits and they take bits and they try to pass that off as Tolkien inspired or something like that. It's kind of like you get uh so basically the Numenorians have a reverence for the angelic god Olmo, and they they pray to him, they appreciate his work, he loves them, he helps them. And what they got from that is the sea is always right, which was utter garbage. That is a perfect example of how they totally miss the whole point of Tolkien's work. It, they would Tolkien would never write that, and that's not how they went about interacting with Olmo. But of course, I don't even know. Oh, right, I keep forgetting always that part of the reason for that is that they don't have access to the Silmarillion. They only have access to the appendices, and that's part of the disaster of the Rings of Power. Is if they had maybe more, which never mind, they mess up anyways. It's not a question of really. It's about who's working on this, but it really puts them in a bind to try and do something to do a story that takes place in Tolkien's universe, but not have the connective tissue and the rights to really put it all together, especially when you're not actually trying to tell the story of Lord of the Rings. Probably the safest bet would have been probably to just retell this Lord of the Rings, but in in an episodic format. But of course, as I said, the people are so obsessed with themselves these days. They can't think like Tolkien, so they can't make a good adaptation of his work. So what's the point? There's no, we need a miracle on this. Anyways, thank you everyone for tuning in. I'll be live again next Friday. I've been delinquent a little bit on other videos, so I will be bringing those out soon. Thank you everyone for watching. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe. And God bless everyone. Bye.